Hello, everybody. Welcome back for a second episode of Starving Artists. And today with me is my other hungry friend, Lucas. And Lucas,
Hello.
I am also here with him. So,
You're
um,
you are here with me and I'm
I,
here with you.
yeah, he's at, yeah. Hey, I can go walk over there and say hi to you if you
You have
want.
another
But
friend named Lucas?
no, no,
Oh,
no,
no,
no, no.
okay.
We're both in the same room. We're just pretending to do this because,
Yeah, because of the social distance guidelines, we have to
yeah,
pretend
exactly.
like we're in
Yeah.
different houses. That would be the production value is really these are actually sound stages set up behind us to look like messy bedrooms.
Yeah, it's fake, but it's trying to look authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so
Homey.
so today we kind of have like a general question to start off this thing with, and it's kind of and from a musician standpoint to like a comedian standpoint, how would you view a gig? What is a gig per se to you? You know,
One gig is working on the railroad.
it could be no, but like
It could be.
as a comedian, like what is the what would you say is like, oh, I got this gig, like I kind of we kind of talked off camera a little bit, because surprise, we do that sometimes, and you kind of said that your definition of it was like you had to get paid for it to be a gig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think of a gig as not just an opportunity to to do the thing. I think of it as like, oh, I've got a gig, someone's paying me to be there. I'm gonna try to do my best material. I'm not gonna work new jokes. I think of it kind of like you're not gonna perform a song that you haven't performed for the first time at a gig before, right? But the practice between a comedian and a musician is kind of different because you're practicing with the band versus me practicing in the mirror in the bathroom, chalking myself up, trying to get some courage. But yeah, that's kind of the difference. I think for me comes from getting paid, which so I guess I would say I haven't really gotten a gig yet because I haven't really gotten paid for comedy. I've done shows where they have like a flyer with my face on it, but as if you listen to the last episode, I'm pretty new to this during the pandemic. Comedy's not really doing great at the moment. Kind of like live music, but so I think getting paid is a good distinguisher for me. But at the same time, when I'm not working new material necessarily, when I'm trying to bring like these are the jokes that I know will work with a crowd of people, I'm trying to put on a good show. Obviously, I'm always trying to put on a good show, but that's for me. What do you consider a gig? Because like you
It's
said, we talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah, I think it's hard to distinguish because if I mean I hate to say it like this, but if the idea is like you're getting paid to do it and that's what makes a gig, that is then like so many people who are to me, oh, I have a gig down here, uh that negates that because there's so many people who do things for like, I mean, and I fucking hate this about both industries is like the idea of like, oh, you're playing for exposure. It's like fuck you, like pay me.
Mhm.
Like I fucking hate exposure, dude. Like, and I know like exposure is important and fuck all. I would do a gig for exposure. Like I would. Like I'm not even. Why am I kidding myself? I totally do a gig for exposure. It's just that the idea of like playing for exposure is so cheap and that's one thing about music and comedy that's so different is that um comedy you can't really practice other than being in front of a crowd because
Yeah,
to you comedy's subjective, so it's really hard uh to find practice, but music also can be subjective, but there are a lot of more objective sort of things, like that like a part, I mean, obviously something can sound good to you and not as good to other people, but like you can practice your parts and you can practice a song, like by yourself or with your band, not in front of a crowd. So then I guess as a musician, anytime you're in front of a crowd counts as a gig to me. Like that the very basis of like, oh, we've got a gig is it could go anywhere from like, oh, we're opening for Nickelback at this fucking amphitheater. Oh shit,
the dream.
that's an awesome gig. Good job. All the way to, oh, my buddy's having a party and we're opening for like this other band, and it's like, oh, that's also a gig. Even like a restaurant called me and said they want me to play at 7 o'clock for tips. Like that to me is also a gig. um I really
Yeah.
do think that a gig ranges so much. And I mean, what would you say is like, I mean, obviously this is kind of comparative to like where you are now, but what would you say is like a great gig? Like what would you go to play this blank slate of a gig? Don't it's maybe it's a small theater, maybe it's a big theater, whatever it is. But what would you say if you can walk away from that night and have something to make it a good gig? What would that something be?
Money.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody giving me money to do stand-up comedy would be awesome, because most of the time you just show up and nobody's expecting you to be there. That's how open miking works. And I actually, have you done open miking? Have you done some comedy before?
I did do like one thing. Did Chandler tell you about that?
Yeah, I think you
Yeah,
mentioned it.
yeah.
Yeah, at
Okay,
one point.
so I did this. I went down to Portland and I played at this place, and I think it was called Brick House or something
Come
like
on,
that.
you remember.
It was something. It had like weird letters, and I think it changed its name recently. But this was like 2 3 years ago. Oh
Hmm.
yeah, 3 years ago. And I did two sets. So I did like one in the afternoon and then I did one at night. And surprisingly, like you were saying, like people would get drunk later at night, like that's gonna make the jokes go better. Surprisingly, my first set did like phenomenal, and it was awesome. I only had like 4 or 5 minutes, and I made like probably I just told like one story, and I had like two or three jokes, and I told a really like bad story about like middle school something happening, and it's a weird thing of like growing up in like a Christian household while you're a teenager because you want to like break all these rules and all this shit. I just talked about some kind of weird things, but
Yeah,
the
relatable.
yeah, the first set went really well. Everybody laughed. Everybody was having a great time. The very first joke, this guy was already cracking up, wheezing, like slapping a table, and I was like, okay, this is gonna go great. And then I finished it. I walked off. Everybody said, "Good job. It was awesome." Then the second set, I kind of walked in with like this cocky attitude, thinking, "Oh, this set's gonna go great," because the last one did. And I did the first joke, and nobody laughed. And then it was like, "Oh shit!" And so the whole rest of the set, like I think my best joke, which I like improvised, it was like it got like a couple chuckles, and then I literally walked off stage and I was like, what the fuck happened? Like just different people, even though at the same place, it just didn't go over as well. And
Yeah,
I yeah, so that was my only one time doing it, and I really wish I would have done it more because I fucking love doing that. And that's why it's
it
so
is
fun
not
talking
too
about it,
late.
because you have so much more experience. I went down there one time and I just did it because I felt like doing it. And that was all I could say about it. But yeah.
No, but that perfectly encapsulates how the practicing it is different, because even when you perform it, if you played every note exactly the same in a song, the crowd is probably going to generally enjoy it in the same way. But
Hmm.
if I hit every single syllable, all the timing was exactly the same, and all my jokes, my cadence, my delivery, my body posture, my
Hmm.
confidence going in, how many drinks are in me if I've smoked a cigarette, all those factors can be exactly the same, but the crowd could just not be having it that day. You could have walked up after somebody who just tanked the room telling like horrible jokes, or a really long story that had no punchline, because that happens all the time, where
Oh
somebody gets
man.
up and they're just like, this is this happened to me, and it's not a funny or relatable story, and it's just like they're sitting there for 5 minutes, and the person gets to the end and they're crushed and defeated, and the audience feels that.
Hmm.
Like, so that's why I think getting up on stage doesn't necessarily equal a gig in stand up. Is That's not how I think about it, because it's an opportunity to practice being in front of a crowd.
Okay. Okay,
That's
that makes
why
total
I draw
sense.
this, because there are two portions of it, and performance and stage presence totally is a huge part of being a musician. I played in jazz bands all the way through college, and like getting up there and being confident as a team and like knowing your shit, like that stage presence is important. But it's just a total different ball game when the people can fucking yell at you while you're doing your art, where they can be like,
Oh
"You
man.
suck."
And you're like, oh yeah. See, that's a really big distinction between music and stand up, is that you practice at home and then you show up to a place and you perform in front of people, that's a gig. And with music, oh, did it go down the wrong pipe?
Yeah, I was I was nug for earlier.
Oof.
That's what it was. No, apologies. Excuse me.
Oh no, you're good. But I was gonna say is that basically, with music, you practice at home, you show up to the gig, you play, and you perform in front of people, and that to me is a gig because it's a performance. While yes, you're also performing at home, it's different when you're performing in front of a crowd. But with comedy, you're always performing in front of a crowd. So the distinction between a gig and not a gig in comedy has to be bigger than if you're in front of a crowd or not, because you're always in front of a crowd, which basically means that at entry level you're getting gigs, and that's not necessarily like the way it works. And I totally get that. I guess with
Yeah.
with
I mean, like there are musical open mics too. And if you were going down to an open mic where nobody was expecting you, you were just showing up with your acoustic and you're like, and somebody's like, "What are you doing today?" Would you say I'm going to an open mic, or would you say I've got a gig later?
You're totally right. You're totally right. You know what? It honestly depends on who I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to like some buddies, I'm like, oh, I've got this open mic I'm going to. With my parents, I'd probably say like, oh, I've got a gig. If I was trying to impress,
And that's because you want to impress them. Be like,
yeah,
they might think that I'm making money for doing it.
they might think I'm actually getting fucking paid.
Exactly. That's why I think it's the distinction. That's why I think getting paid is the difference.
Oh yeah, no, and you're right. That's probably a good fine line to put that. Uh, I think for me, like a successful gig, like you said, is anytime you get paid. I would obviously agree that. Now let me ask you this. So
I mean, comedians get paid even if all the jokes don't land. If nobody thinks it's funny, it's kind of like I don't remember who said this, but it's like you're a stunt man. You get paid for the attempt.
hey,
Like,
fuck yeah, dude.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and actually, do you when you do your open mics, I doubt it because I don't know if this is like socially acceptable. I don't know, but do you like have a tip jar or anything? Can people tip you? Is that a
When
thing?
we put on open mics, as we mentioned last episode, I've been running drive up comedy shows in
Mhm.
Portland. So everybody's in the car, tune in on the radio. We have a tip jar and an FM or not and a Venmo available, so like people
Awesome.
can tip from their cars. But yeah, that goes towards like the fees for the venue, whatever that looks like. In our
Mhm.
case, it's a fucking generator to put in the parking lot. But yeah, there's generally always a tip jar, but it's mostly comedians, and comedians don't make a whole lot of money, so there's not a whole lot of tipping going on.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
What
sense.
about you? Do you usually get, or have
Every
you gotten? What's the
I
biggest tip you've ever gotten? Because we got a $50
uh
bill once. We were like, what?
Damn, biggest tip I ever got was someone on the internet told me I sucked. I'm just kidding. No. And that
Yeah,
I should get a new singer. No, but actually
that's
that's true.
that's worth
That,
more than that's worth its weight in gold, and it weighs two bits,
a lot on
two
my soul. It
megabytes.
weighs a lot on my soul.
Hmm.
No, but I think the biggest tip. I mean, I would suggest every musician at any gig you ever play. If I say at any moment in time, it is not socially unacceptable to have a tip jar. If you go to play at a restaurant and people I used to ask when I was 16 or 17, I would go play at like some pizza place that had like this little stage in the corner, and I would bring my acoustic guitar, or I had a buddy who was playing music. When I would email them back and forth about the date and time and gig and all this stuff, you kind of ask them like, okay, who's the guy that I meet when I get there? And they'll be like, oh, go talk to Tony. So then you walk through the door and you're like, hey, I'm looking for Tony. And then you talk to Tony about everything. Well, one thing that you do on the email is typically is you go, is it okay if I bring my merch stand?
Hmm.
Or is it okay if I bring my tip jar or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
And so one thing that I used to do is I used to go, if you tip as because I wouldn't want to sell, because if you sell then legally, which is bullshit because nobody's ever going to go after you if you're a small time musician, but technically they could. But what I would do is I'd go, all right, if you tip, then no matter how much you tip, you could tip 5 cents, a quarter, whatever. You could tip $10, however much you want to tip. You get a free bracelet, which would have like, it was like had the band name on it, and then I think it also had the QR code in there for like a Spotify link to go to like our Spotify album. And then I said,
High
and
tech.
if you tip $10 or more, you get an album, and if you want, but we would hand them out for free sometimes. But that's a whole nother story. But long story short, the biggest tip I think we ever got was, it wasn't even a tip, because like I said, that's how I used to do it. So people would, I remember we played this one show in Leavenworth, and it was like, we played on this, like, it was like a bar, but it was like in the back, and it was outside, and it had like a stage and a sound area, and you could probably fit like 50 to 75 people in the back, but there was probably like 25 people back there, honestly. And we were playing, and then at the end there was like 4 or 5 people who were like, hey man, do you have like merch? And we didn't, we only had bracelets and CDs. That's like merch, I guess.
Not merch you want.
Yeah, yeah, not like a T-shirt that you can wear and people go, oh, well, what's that? And you're like, oh, it's a band of songs. It's nothing like that. It's like you have to sport it or you have to listen to it in your car. But I was like, I have CDs, and all 4 of those people bought a CD and a bracelet. So I think that equates to like $45 or something like that.
Solid.
And so, I mean, if you want to count that as a tip, I mean, they actually asked for it, but and yeah, so
Well, I
that's
mean,
a whole lot.
I have no merch and probably will not have merch ever
Well, it's weird.
because
Comedians don't typically have merch. Like,
no,
I
yeah.
don't, like. I mean, let's be honest. Like, the difference is that, like, if, some hipster sitting on the corners, like, oh, I listen to this band, you've never heard of them, but they're super
Hmm.
underrated. They have 57 listeners on Spotify, and their name
Yeah.
is New Management or whatever. And you're like, oh shit, okay, but that's kind of cool or whatever. But then, like, you go and you're like, oh yeah, there's this comedian I listen to, and he's like super underrated, and he's on Spotify and has 57 listeners. That's like way unheard of compared to the other,
Hmm.
to the latter. But or to the prior. It's like, as much as I actually think that, like, comedians, you want to perform live, and that's also another thing is the difference in a stand up and music. There's so many differences, obviously, but as we're discussing, I come up with more and you come up with more. But a very big contrasting thing is when you listen to a band that you like, and then you're like, oh, I want to go to one of their shows. You like expect to hear your favorite songs, that you expect them to perform them, and you're almost
Yeah.
upset, and you're upset if they don't perform them. But with a
You're like the
comedian,
classics only. Come
yeah,
on.
yeah, well, yeah, play the hits and all that stuff. But with a
Hmm.
comedian, it's like you expect them not to tell the same joke, because you don't want to hear the same thing. You want to hear new jokes. And you actually would be upset if they did tell like the same joke. Like, imagine,
Yeah.
you're listening to, I don't know any comedians that you're super into, but like, let's just say, like, I don't know, like the first comedian I could think of is, let's say, like Bill Burr or something. And you're like, fuck yeah, I love Bill Burr. I'm going to go watch him live. And then you go watch him live, and that album that he has on Spotify, which you like listen to like 4 or 5 times, so you like memorized it, and you're like, oh, this is so funny. You show up and he opens with the first joke, and then he goes into the second joke, and you're like, oh shit, he's just gonna make jokes about, he's gonna do the whole thing. You're like, I already
Yeah.
know what he's gonna say. This isn't funny to me. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not surprised,
Exactly.
so I'm gonna leave. And that's one thing, is that with like a musician, you want to make everything that you can. You want to make it at the best quality that you can, and you want to put it out, and then you want to promote it and hope that people like it and then want to listen to it live. But with stand up, it's like you only want to make like one album, because you can never really perform those live ever again once you make them. And then you kind of go, all right, now I have another live set that I perform, and then I have like that recorded set.
Yeah.
So
Once
it's
once
just,
you once you commit it to the internet, you pretty much retire those jokes. I was talking with a guy that I think he lived in either Texas or Colorado or something like that. He'd been doing stand up for 7 years,
oh
and he
wow,
said he had just recorded his first album right before the pandemic hit, right before all of it
that's probably
hit.
like the
And I was
perfect
like,
time to do it.
yeah, so you have something to promote yourself with during this time. I agree, it's probably the best. But I asked him if it got him any gigs, and he's like, "You fucking see any gigs around?" As we're standing in our fucking gravel parking lot.
He's like,
But
yeah, my career's on fucking fire.
yeah, clearly, I am here with you, so it's doing dandy. No, but he had done, and I asked him, I was like, "Have you done any of those jokes since?" Because like I'm still meeting comedians in the scene. I'm still 7 years is honestly like not that long in the tenure of comedy. Like
Mhm.
it kind of goes like 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20, 30 years. That's kind of like when, I mean, probably with a milestone of 15, but like people do comedy their whole fucking lives. So it's like there's a huge hierarchy to it. And 7 isn't that long, but nobody is like coming out to the gravel parking lot if they've been doing comedy for a decade. They're just
Yeah.
like, fuck that. I'm doing Zoom mics. Where people tip me on PayPal.
Hey.
But and he hadn't done any of those jokes since. And he was like, yeah, and I get it, because that was one of the first things that I experienced doing open mics. Was I was going back to the same place every week. There were comedians that were also coming back every week, and there were, a couple regulars, and they had heard my shit before. And like, even if I was doing little tweaks, trying to like play with the wording or change the cadence of it so that the punchline hit harder, they were jokes that they had heard before. And I was like, man, I just feel like a piece of shit because I'm just coming with the same stuff, even 2 weeks in a row. But in reality, you need to work it like
You need
over
to
and
hone
over.
your craft. Yeah, you need to work
Yeah.
it out. Yeah, and you know
And
what?
that's just less possible right now, because there were opportunities to do 5 nights a week, or 5 shows a night rather. Like before the pandemic, you would just like hop from open mic to open mic, but you just can't do that right now.
And you know what's kind of fucked up is that right after you get done telling that joke, and people are sitting there like, "Boo! You just said the same joke from last week," and you're like, "Okay," and you walk off. Then a musician comes up right behind you and goes, dun 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 dun. Everybody's like, "Oh my god, I love this song! I've been listening to this song since fucking high school." And you're like, "What the fuck?" Like, they didn't come up with anything original this week. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell nostalgic knock knock jokes that you heard from your grandpa,
and it'll bring you back.
Laugh.
Yeah,
right?
Remind you of the summer of '69.
69. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. I think that an amazing gig would be like, I mean, I don't know. Would you rather walk away? It's hard. It's actually, this is probably a more difficult question, because I can actually quantify how successful my music career is with how many listeners I have on Spotify. Like, I can literally look and be like, "Oh, I have 20 monthly listeners right now." And while that's not like, obviously that's not very good, it's not amazing, but there's still 20 people out there who are like, "I'm going to listen to this guy." And I don't know, personally, that makes me happy, because I know, like, I can name like my mom, my dad, my best friends, and that's probably, and then maybe my girlfriend, and that's 7 people that I can think of that if I ask them,
she doesn't listen to you.
And no, actually, you know what? Straight up, she's not gonna watch this podcast. I know that because my girlfriend doesn't support me. I'm just kidding. No, I'm fucking kidding. She supports me in every way possible, but she just doesn't like to sit there and listen to me talk all day, because she already has to sit there and listen to me talk all day. So
yeah,
no, but the thing is,
she's clocking out of that job.
Yeah, she's done with that.
She's not gonna spend her free time.
Exactly. Though, but that's actually kind of part of it. But no joke though. Like, there's 20 monthly listeners that I have right now or whatever. But like, I can only name like 5 people that if I said, "Hey man, I just put out a new song. Would you please check it out?" I only know 5 people or so that would actually do that when I want them to. So all the people that are listening to me, I'm just gonna go off this and just say all 20 people that are listening to me right now, I don't know who they are, which means at some point I've actually gained fans of some sort, right? Yeah. So, and if I put out a new song, I have 170 followers, so Spotify will tell them, "Hey, this person just put out a new song. Here it is." So I have a hypothesis. I'm going to try this out because I'm going to have a new song come out pretty soon. I think in like 3 weeks. Don't
release radar.
Yeah. So exactly. So I'm hoping that I'll jump up from 20 to like 170. Hopefully, all of those people will listen to it when it comes out. You never know. But what I was going to say, the main point is that you can quantify how successful your career is going directly with how many people are listening to you at the moment. It like totally, you're like, "Oh, I put out a new song and I promoted myself and now I gained 20, 30 listeners. Okay, that makes sense. And I can see the growth." But with comedy, it's weird because you kind of only know night to night how many people are showing up when they know that you're playing. And so
that's if they
Or-
know you're playing.
and that's if
like
they
if
know
your
you're.
name is on the thing, and your name doesn't get to be on the poster for like a while.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's only, and they probably will only ironically put your name on the poster if they know it can draw people. So the irony there is that, or the ironic part is that with music, it's like so much easier to feel, oh, I'm doing well because these people are listening to me when I'm not telling them to. But with
Yeah.
comedy, it's like you're trying to get people to show up to watch you without you having to tell them to. And that's way more difficult because I could probably realistically, if I promoted the shit out of myself and I just fucking grinded for like a couple months, I could probably get 1,000 monthly listeners. I probably could. I don't know if I could hold that or sustain that for very long, but I could probably get there at one point. But there
I
is
think
no way in hell that I could ever get 1,000 people to show up and watch me perform. Like, not for at least a long time without like
Mhm.
maybe getting a huge record label to promote the shit out of me for me because there's no way I can do that by myself. So
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that comedy, it's like you're doing the music game but on expert because it's harder to get people to come out and see you live than it is, hey man, click, I'm going to send you this Snapchat that has a link. All you've got to do with your finger is just do this and then just wait 3.5 minutes and you gave me a listen. That is all I require you to do. And there are more people who will just say, no, I'm not going to do that and just move on to the next thing. But with comedy, you're trying to get them to actually fucking get there. Car keys out, get to the car,
Yeah.
drive all the way to the fucking place, wait,
Come
and
out to
then
the Chuckle Hut, buy 2 drinks, fucking like
exactly. That's so much like fucking steeper, dude. So when you can get, if, as a comedian, if you can get 20 people out to a gig, to me, that is the exact same thing as getting like 100 listeners on Spotify. That is the same, I feel like, or actually maybe even more, like 200 listeners on Spotify. That's fucking crazy. I really do. When if you ever play a place and you get 10 people to show up without even, oh yeah, hey, we're here to see Lucas, and you're like, who? And then these 10 people, and you're like, oh fuck, that would be like the most flattering, fucking amazing thing ever. So I
it,
think,
it fucking would be.
yeah,
The thing I think part of what I enjoy about it though is I feel no pressure to self promote myself at all. Like I hate doing that. You're really good about it. We've talked about it, but I hate being like, come look at this thing that I'm doing.
oh, it's
Like,
so
but with
shameful.
comedy, yeah, it is.
It
And I
is.
wish, and I'll need to get better about it, I'm sure, if I'm gonna get bigger. But hopefully I just tell jokes that are good enough and everybody is like, hopefully word just gets around. But
Mhm.
because with comedy, I can just show up and there are people there to see other people. And I
Yep.
don't, it feels good to have people show up and be like, I'm here to see you. I'm here to support you. That feels really good.
Mhm.
It's happened a couple times. But at the same time, I'm trying to make every person in the room laugh. And it doesn't matter if you came there for me or not, because if you came there for me, I could probably fill a room, like you said. I could, not 1,000, but I could probably fill a room with 25 people if I like blasted on everything, like come see me do my thing. And they might all laugh at every single joke because they're my friends and they like me. But I would discount that, in my heart. Even if everybody's like, we had a really good time, it's like, yeah, but I stacked the deck in my favor. Like you weren't a random audience. The random sample of people, like, because these jokes need to work on everybody, not just the people that like me. So I like the aspect where it is hard. It is a little bit expert mode where you can't bring people out, but that means you're gonna do gigs for the only time that I was ever really on a poster. It was in a backyard, and literally only 2 people that weren't comedians were there, and it was a couple, and they showed up and they were watching. The first guy did a bit where he had a mask made out of a maxi pad, and then he did like another joke. He had a briefcase that had a single Coors Light in it, and he took like 2 minutes opening up this briefcase, open up the Coors Light. He's very funny. His name is
Uh-huh.
Chris Lawfridge for everybody. He goes by Christ these days. That's his closer. But anyway, and then he put a tampon in his mouth. He's like, "Is this as good as the mask, as the maxi pad and shit like that?" They were just bewildered. They had no idea what was going on. And that's like one of the only situations where like my name is like on the poster, on the flyer, like last billing or whatever. But that means like comedians aren't comedians, because we go out and do like open mics and we just show up unannounced and try to get stage time. Most people don't like promote themselves in that way. And I like it because it's less pressure. I don't know.
No, totally. I
But
actually think that, I mean, if I actually would much rather, and this is where I feel like music and comedy kind of intertwine, like with their ideals and how they work, is that if I were to play a gig with 40 people showing up, right? And
yep.
25 of them were from everybody in my band promoting. And oh, I got 7 of my friends and family to come. Oh, I got 7 of my friends. Oh, I got 15 of my friends. Oh, sweet. We got, fucking 30,
You got a fucking show.
20, you got 29, you got 29 people who showed up out of the 40 people. So you have 11 people that we don't even know who they are, and they showed up probably from the other band or something. I would rather play a gig where all 40 people have never heard of my band. Because then, if they liked it, they could go check it out, and that's for potentially 40 new fans or 40 new people who are going to check out 40 new listeners. But if you already have all your friends and family showing up, like you said, stacking the deck, it's like, okay, like you're my friends and family, and I appreciate everything that you do for me, but you're not gonna be fans. Like you're not gonna be people who are like, I love you, mom, but you're not gonna listen to my band every day. You're not gonna put my music on your workout playlists, and you're definitely not gonna buy my t-shirts online. Like that's just you're not going to. And even if you did, I wouldn't want you to.
She won't buy them because you don't sell triple XL. That's what.
I
don't know your mother. I don't know your mother. I'm sure she's a lovely, slender woman. I'm sorry. Apologies to Mrs. Swindell.
No, oh my gosh, no, that's funny. I she's like really nice and stuff, and there's a lot of people who are really nice and stuff, and they would support you, but like you said, they're not the same as genuine listeners or genuine laughs. It's just not the same. Having I love Chandler and Nathan, but for people listening, Chandler and Nathan are like our what would you say there are friends that like
they're how I met you. Like
that's the same. Yeah. So actually, I knew you long before. I'm just kidding. But there are our friends that are. I almost want to say there are in between friends. What I can't remember. Anyways, there are co-friends or whatever, and they every time I show them one of my songs, they're always like, oh dude, this is well, sometimes they're pretty critical, but sometimes I would I'd play a song in front of them, and then they would go, oh man, this is awesome, this is so great, these are the things I love about it, that's awesome. And as much as I super appreciate that, and I appreciate that so much because it takes time to really listen and give your thoughts back to someone, I would much rather have almost any day some random person on the internet tell me the same thing, only because like you said, it's more authentic. Like with your comedy, like I'm gonna go to one of your shows one of these days, and I'm probably gonna bring my recording equipment and record you, but I'm gonna probably hear it and go like, oh my god, dude, this is so fucking funny, this is so awesome, you're so hilarious, and I'm so excited.
Like he's doing it.
Yeah,
he's doing it.
Yeah,
my friends up there like doing the thing I want to support, and that's. But like, if you can get the dude in the back of the bar, that's just there to sip down Coronas and like escape his life, and you can get him really hard. That's like. It feels different. I totally get what you mean. Yeah.
So I think that's one thing.
That's what a gig is to me.
Okay.
Getting the lonely barflies in the back, who fucking can't hang out, can't have no money to tip. That's why I don't make money on any of my gigs.
Yeah, dude. I used to work at a bar. Have I ever told you that? I used to work at a bar, and I used to do dishes.
No.
And there used to be bands, and this is so funny. This is hilarious. There used to be bands that would come in every Friday night and they would play. And you know what's funny? A lot of people would come not because they knew the band, but they would just be like, oh, a live band. I'm going to go see this live band. So like, it's a smaller bar. The room was probably like, the stage was probably like, 15 foot by 10 foot deep, and the audience like crowd room which is like a 3 foot tall, like, you know, dip, and it was probably like 30 feet by 20 feet. So no, it was probably like 20 foot by 20 foot. Let's just say. So you could probably
This sounds
have.
really funny.
Yeah, fuck you.
Yeah.
Sorry. So sorry. I get really hung up on these stupid details. It's really. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's really. I need to work
Dimensions
on
of the
that.
stage. Well, when you went to stage dive, you need to know how far you fall.
I need to do the mental math real quick. Yeah, no, it was this thing where the room could probably honestly fit like 50 people, and they would
Mhm.
sell, or not sell, but there would probably be like 20 to 30 people who would show up every Friday night, and they were like regulars, right? But the band didn't know that they were regulars because the band's from out of town, the band's traveling, the band's whatever. They don't play this place very often, or if they do
Yeah.
play once every couple months, they don't recognize these people. They've only seen them like 2 or 3 times, and it's dark and all that stuff. But like these bands would come in and they'd be like kind of egotistical and they'd kind of think that they were like hot shit because they feel
Yeah.
like they just went to some random place and there was like 30 people who went there, and 30 people in a venue that only could fit like 50 is like, it seems like so many people.
Mhm.
A big stage with 100 people would seem like less people than 50-foot person room with 30 people. So these musicians would be like, I'm the shit, this is fucking awesome. The singer would be like so cocky and all this stuff, and he'd like pull a girl up on stage with him, and like he would like do all this stuff, right? And you
Yeah.
kind of think like, oh man, I'm some band from way out. And like I would look up the bands on Spotify. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, we just put out a record on Spotify, and it's our greatest thing we've ever done, and check it out." And then I would be in the back fucking doing dishes, and I'd be like, "All right, I'm gonna check this guy out," and they'd have like 200 to 300 monthly listeners, which isn't bad. It's better than I'm doing right now, but it's not like with 300 monthly listeners, you couldn't just go to like a random place and get 30 people to show up. With no,
No.
like, oh my god,
No.
the Old West is coming on Friday. We gotta go, honey. Like that's not happening if you only have 300 monthly listeners. So,
Mhm.
um,
Fucking 30 people came out to see the skid marks, man. We're doing great.
yeah, no, and these people get like egotistical and they think they're fucking hot shit. And every time, because I was like 16, 17, and I was the drummer for the high school, and I was one of the more prominent drummers. Like I was in jazz band, I was in pep band, I was in concert band, and it was a small school, so I was fairly popular. And so everybody knew me as like the guy who played drums, right? There was like 3 or 4 other drummers that were like very prominent as well, but still, it was like that, small school. But basically, I felt like I was pretty good. I was better back then probably than I am now. I never play anymore, but I was pretty
That's-
good for being 16, 17. In fact, I actually feel like this is going to sound awful, but all these drummers would come in, and of course, all my friends who I worked with at the bar would be like, "Hey, our dishwasher, he's a drummer too. Like, you should go talk to him." And so, like, the drummer would come down, and I never asked for this, by the way. I never fucking asked for this shit. I don't like this. This bothers me so much. So these drummers would come off the stage, like, after they were done with their set, or maybe sometimes before their set, and they'd come back and they would, like, talk to me, like it's not even off stage or backstage because there's no, like, main stage because it's not like a big theater. It's like a fucking bar. And so they talk to me, like, by the fucking dishwasher, and they would be like, "Hey dude, I'm gonna give you some tips about how to live your dream because I'm living my dream," and shit
Yeah.
like that. And they'd be like, if you ever want to be professional, like, take some lessons, bro. Like, you're gonna need that shit. And like, it's just so funny. And then they go up on stage and they play like fucking, like, just some like really hard rock beat.
Rock
and it's,
steady drums.
yeah, and you're like, what the fuck? And then I remember this is gonna sound even worse, but this is me being egotistical for a second. One band came up and they did the same shit, but then the drummer was like older, so he was like in his 40s or 50s, and all the other drummers that I was talking about were probably like in their 30s, maybe late 20s. But this guy, he goes, man, I used to be a dishwasher too, so but now I'm in a professional band. And he was, I think he was actually kind of doing a nice thing, but I think this was kind of him like stroking his ego a little bit, him letting a dishwasher at this random bar that he's playing at get to play one song on the drums.
Sure.
And so I think that's kind of nice, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I feel the way he was, it wasn't like the way he was acting was very, I'm all that, like just kind of, I'm so
Yeah.
awesome. And
A
so it
little
just kind of,
demeaning.
it came, yeah, it was demeaning. It came off a little wrong. It rubbed me the wrong way. So, anyways, he let me on stage and he let me play one song. And here's this thing: if you're a band that's touring and you're playing at all these bars and you're being able to play like 30, you're playing in front of 30 or 40 people every night. That's actually, I would say, in my book, that's successful. That's cool. That's awesome. But if your set consists of literally every single song in your set being a cover of somebody else's songs, then I would take a step back and go, let's play our own stuff. Like, I don't know. I feel like
You're a fucking poser.
well, that's the thing. It's like, I don't know. I don't want to sound like an asshole, but I feel like that's kind of it. I understand, like, if you're playing a set of 10 songs and you do like 3 or 4 covers, but the rest are yours, or
Sure.
even doing mostly covers and then being like every once in a while like, hey, this is an original, and people like the originals. That's whatever. But these people were doing specifically, strictly all covers. And so this guy, anyways, he lets me go up and I'm playing. That old time for rock and roll. What's the get those old records off the shelf. I don't even know the name of that song.
Oh.
And by myself. Music ain't got the same soul. I like that old type of rock and roll. That song? Anyways.
Yeah, I know.
So, okay, I don't know the name of it. But it's a very famous song. And this guy's like, hey, and he had the mic and he's like, we're gonna have the dishwasher come back up here because he plays drums and he's gonna come up and play drums for one song. And I remember the drummer like handing me the sticks. And I remember he handed it to me like I didn't know how to hold sticks. So he handed one stick to one hand stick into the other hand, and then he like
Fuck
grabbed
that.
yeah, and then he like
Fuck
grabbed
that.
yeah, and then he grabbed my hand and like adjusted the stick. Like I didn't know how to fucking hold a pair of sticks. And so I'm like, okay. And by the way,
Goddamn.
his a lot of drummers will do this thing where they have their snare like really, so if you're looking at like the drums, they'll have their snare and their toms face like at them instead of angled up. And so the snare was angled really far down. And that's something that drummers do when like they're new or they like don't know how to set up a drum set. I don't know. So like
Sure.
I came up on the drum set and I was like, it's kind of a douche move to like mess with
To
a
adjust
person's
another man's drums.
Yeah, no, it really is.
I was an audio tech actually for like 4 years. So I set up live sound stuff for like bands, and so I've set up like drum sets. And the guys would always come, and I'm not a drummer, so they would come and they would like fix their cymbals and shit and move all of it. And eventually, I'm like, all right, everybody's setting it up like this. I'm gonna just do that. And even if they barely moved anything, they would just still like fiddle with it like a little bit. Like,
yeah, they have to. It's like
okay,
a
man.
weird. Yeah. So I sit on the drum set and I'm like, it's kind of a douche move, but I'm just gonna do it anyways because it's gonna affect my playing. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm playing in front of like 40 people that I didn't expect this night. I'm just working right now. Like this is not normal. Okay, whatever. So I sit down and I go to sit down, and I hate to say it like this, but a part of me was like, I think I was like 17 at the time, and I was like, fuck it, let's just like give it this all. Like I'm playing like that old bluesy song, but I'm fucking like fucking double time and half time and fucking like doing all these crazy fills and shit, and like he had double foot pedals even though he didn't have one song where he needed them. So I was like, okay,
That's
and
the most quintessential fucking poser shit I've ever heard in my life. That double bass kick, and he's just fucking doesn't even use it.
I swear to God, this guy had like I think I can't remember the exact. I think he had like 6 cymbals, which for me I use a ride, a china, and then 2 crashes. So you have 4 cymbals and a hi hat. That's pretty standard, and some people would even consider that to be a little excessive. This guy had like 6 cymbals just everywhere, and
fucking blowing up your phone. You got places to be.
I know. Well, my girlfriend's texted me. Anyways, she's at work.
Just call all my fucking Spotify listeners. Fucking
It's just I'm so famous, so I've got these fangirls and stuff, or fangirl. And so
you got groupies. That's another episode. Groupies.
we'll talk about groupies one day. That'd be fun. Maybe I should get some groupies before I talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, I just fucking shredded and just did my absolute fucking best. And when I got done, the guy didn't even talk to me. I just like handed him the sticks, and he was just like, fucking walked back on the drum
Yeah.
set, and then kept playing his rock beats. And like, listen, I
You hand
wouldn't.
him the stick and like put it back and like move his thumb and like
Yeah.
It's
I wouldn't have done
shitty,
that
dude.
to him. I wouldn't have fucking done that to him. But he was so condescending and he was such a dick. And like, even though it was him doing a nice thing, it was someone doing a nice thing, but it was like a backhanded, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. Looking back, I probably could have handled the situation better. But I was 17, so I didn't have the foresight. That's probably the
Yeah,
best.
fuck it.
Yeah.
Screw that guy. If he's like, if you're gonna invite somebody else up on stage, if you're gonna play with anybody, you got to be comfortable in comedy, in music, in whatever sports. You got to be comfortable with the fact that there are gonna be people that are a lot fucking better than you, like,
Yeah.
and you don't know where they're gonna find it. There are like 6-year-olds that play the violin better than people like in the London Philharmonic. That's probably insulting to the London Philharmonic, but you get what I'm saying. There are like there's talent, pockets of talent all over this.
Everywhere. Yeah, you wouldn't expect it. There's actually a guy in my town right now. It's some like kid who's probably like 11 or 12 years old, and he literally brings these pots and pans out, and like he just like plays these rhythms on there. But he's got rhythm and he's got good time. And a part of me kind of wants to be like, I should just set up my drum set one day when he's out there playing with pots and pans. I should be like, hey man, I'll be back in 10 minutes, and just like grab my drum set, load it up, drive over there and be like, play this drum set, because I think he doesn't, I don't know if he has a drum set or not. And I want him to, fucking do that if he can. But I wouldn't be like, hey, play this drum set, and then be like, now let me teach you something and da da da.
Yeah.
I would just let him fucking go at it and be like, this is fun. Like,
Let me give you a shot, kid.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, no, and yeah, it's so dumb. But anyways, I guess to conclude, a thing about a gig is that with comedy, it's not necessarily, it's about practice more than anything. So with a gig, it's like, all right, I'm not practicing tonight. This is my performance. And with music,
Yeah.
we already do a ton of practicing at home. So anytime we get to play in front of more than 7 people, this is a gig. Actually, no.
Yeah.
Anytime we get to play in front of anybody who's not in the band, that's a gig.
anytime, and maybe anytime you're not just like working your jokes to yourself, maybe that is a gig, but like the crowd changes performance musically and comedically, but that's just where I draw the line. And, they're different art forms, but at the end of the day, we come up with fucking 15 different things that are similar and we can connect. So the gig doesn't matter because neither of us are making money right now, so it
Exactly.
doesn't matter what you call it.
Hey, that's not 100% true. Okay, I got a check from my
Yeah.
I got a check from my distributor company for like $3 last month. Okay, for all my streams.
Oh shit!
So my
Damn,
my yearly streams. So
I got a drink ticket once. That was nice.
hey, look at us, dude. Look at us
Yeah.
together. All right, man. Well, hey, I think I'm gonna conclude this episode right now because I think we're hitting the marker right now.
Sounds
So
good.
anybody who's watching this right now, if whatever instrument you play, whatever art form, style, whatever you do, even if you don't do any of those things, comment down below and say what do you think makes a gig? What do you think makes a proper gig? So, but thank you for watching. Thank you everybody for tuning in again. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate everybody who watches this, and hopefully soon we'll start promoting this thing. Maybe, I don't know, whatever I'll do.
Yeah.
But do you have any messages you want to say to the people?
No, thanks for anybody that made it all the way to the end. Hopefully we'll keep doing it and they'll keep getting funnier and we'll be able to talk about new music, new comedians and stuff as the times change, as gigs reappear from the wilderness and we get to keep getting out there and practicing our art and feed ourselves with it.
All right. Thank you everybody for watching and have a wonderful night. We have been Starving Artists. Stay easy.